When I left the hospital, I wandered back to the old Venice Pier in Prince Constantine's Gnazdo. It was 5 a.m, and the police had finished cleaning the place up. But the word had gotten out. A crowd had gathered. They always do. Curious, restless, sordid crowd, equipped with everything from grappling hooks to homemade diving helmets, all climbing over each other for a chance to fish for the mermaid. She who had brought death to 3 people, injury to 2 others in the course of one night. And suppose they found her. What then? A lot of glittering pieces of white coal set in a metal frame we call precious. Look at the suckers grab. That's all, Marlowe. Home and to bed.
The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, bringing you Raymond Chandler's most famous character, star Gerald Moore, and are produced and directed by Norman Macdonnell. Script is by Mel Donnelly, Robert Mitchell, and Gene Levitt. Featured in the cast were Rita Lynn, John Daner, Michael Ann Barrett, Wilms Herbert, Junius Matthews, Herb Vigran, and Mark Lawrence. The special music is composed and conducted by Richard Orant. Be sure and be with us next week when Philip Marlowe says...
It started with a terrified woman lost in a maze of memories she couldn't explain. And waiting for her outside an open window was death.
Another show has joined the CBS Sunday Night Parade. It's The Contented Hour, starring Buddy Clark and featuring the finest in popular and semi-classical music. It comes to you on most of these CBS stations for the first time tomorrow night, making its debut on CBS the same night as Red Skelton and Edgar Bergen and Charles McCarthy. Yes, this fall, you hear them all on CBS. This is Paul Masterson speaking. Now, stay tuned for Gangbusters, which follows immediately over most of these same CBS stations. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
And from 75 years ago today, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS, Philip Marlowe, Gerald Moore, starring as Marlowe. Coming up tomorrow on Classic Radio Theater, we'll have Westerns with Gunsmoke, starring William Conrad, Have Gun Will Travel, starring John Daner, Casey Crime Photographer, starring Stotts Cotsworth, an episode of Gangbusters from 1948, and an episode of Lum and Abner. Up next, though, Escape.
What's with the basket, Mom? Picnic?
Nope, this is Grandma's Pantry, modern version.
Great, Mom. Only what's it for?
Civil defense. And you're the one who brought the idea home from scout meeting. Here, help me check off the list. Fruit juice?
Yup.
Powdered milk?
Right.
Canned meats?
Yup.
Into civil defense comes Grandma's Pantry, the symbol of preparedness. Unexpected company? Grandma always had plenty for everyone.
No matter what unexpected disaster, your family should have a 7-day supply of food on hand, kept well protected in jars or tins, and safe in a shelter area.
In an emergency or during evacuation in case of enemy attack, it's too late to plan. You will have to depend on your own resources, on Grandma's Pantry.
Assure the future. Know the 6 steps to survival. Make this year your family's year for civil defense. You take the first step.
Civil defense, an American tradition.
Now an early episode of Escape, going back 77 years to October 1st, 1949. Paul Frees and Hans Conried starring in The Most Dangerous Game.
Worried about the price of butter and eggs? Fed up with the housing shortage? Want to get away from it all?
CBS offers you Escape.
You're alone and unarmed in the green hell of a Caribbean jungle. You're being trailed by a pack of fiercely hungry dogs and a mad hunter armed for the kill. A mad hunter who believes that you, a human being, are the most dangerous game.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Escape, produced by William N. Robeson and directed tonight by Richard Sanville. Escape, carefully planned to free you from the four walls of today, free you for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight, we escape to an island in the Caribbean and the weird sportsmanship of a madman, as Richard Connell tells it in his unforgettable story, The Most Dangerous Game.
My name is Rainsford. You may have heard of me. I make my living hunting big game for many of the major museums of the world, guiding parties of sportsmen on safari in Africa, Tibet, and South America. Perhaps you've had occasion to run across some of my books. But even if you have, there's one incident you won't find described in them. The full story of my most terrible hunt. It all began on board a private yacht en route to Rio. Whitney, my host, and I were smoking our pipes on deck, lounging back in steamer chairs, enjoying the sensuous drowsiness of the warm night.
Good dinner, eh?
Excellent. Afraid I ate too much, though.
Care for some gin rummy?
Oh, no, I don't care to move.
All right. There's a rather large island off there to the right somewhere. It's something of a mystery.
Really? Oh, I didn't know. What island is it?
The old charts call it Ship Trap Island. Suggestive name, isn't it? Sailors have a curious dread of the place. Some superstition.
I can't see it.
Well, you have good eyes, but even you can't see 4 miles or so through a moonless Caribbean night.
No, not even 4 yards. It is dark, isn't it?
It'll be light enough in Rio. Oh, by the way, hope the guns have come from Purdy's. We should have some good jaguar hunting up the Amazon. Great sport, hunting.
Best in the world.
Yeah, for the hunter, not for the jaguar.
Oh, why not? They've no understanding.
Well, even so, I rather think they understand one thing. Fear. The fear of pain and the fear of death.
Huh? Oh, rot, Whitney. Who cares how the jaguar feels?
Perhaps the jaguar does.
Oh, you're a big game hunter, not a philosopher. Look, the world is made up of 2 classes. The hunter and the hunted. We're lucky enough to be the hunters. Do you think we've passed that island yet?
Yeah, can't tell in the dark. I hope so.
Why?
Oh, the place has a reputation. A bad one.
Cannibals?
Hardly. Even cannibals wouldn't live in such an isolated spot. But it's gotten into sailors' legends somehow. Did you notice? The crew seemed jumpy today.
Yes, they were a bit strange now that you mention it.
Yes, it's a sort of dread, a kind of mental chill. I'll be hanged if I haven't felt it myself.
Oh, pure imagination. Well, one superstitious sailor can infect a whole ship's company with his fear.
Maybe. Though sometimes sailors have an extra sense which tells them when they're in danger. Enough of that. I think I'll turn in.
I'm not sleepy. I'll just have another pipe.
Well, good night, then. See you in the morning.
Yes. Good night, Whitney. It was very dark. So dark I could have slept without closing my eyes. The night would have been my eyelids. I puffed at my pipe, got drowsy. Then I was wide awake. A gun out there in the water, a gun. I sprang to the rail, strained my eyes in the direction of those shots, but I couldn't see a thing. I leaped up on the rail to get better elevation, and my pipe, striking a rope, was knocked out of my mouth. I lunged for it, and tight fingers closed around my heart as I realized I'd reached too far and lost my balance. The blood-warm waters of the Caribbean closed over my head. When I came to the surface, the wash from the speeding yacht slapped salt water into my mouth, making me gag and strangling me. I coughed and spat it out and found my voice. Help! 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 The lights from the boat moved steadily away. They quickly became faint fireflies. And then they were blotted out by the night. I struggled out of my clothes and turned to the direction from which I'd heard those shots. I began swimming, slowly, conserving my strength. For an endless time, I fought the sea. Then I began to count my strokes. Thought I could possibly do another 100 before Someone was shooting game. Almost at my very elbow, it seemed. It gave me fresh vitality. I swam toward the sound. Then I was in the breakers. In another moment, I was dragging myself from the swirling waters, pulling myself hand over hand onto the narrow beach, gasping, panting for breath. I saw that the dense jungle came down to the edge of the cliff, and I was on land, on blessed land, safe on the soft, warm sand. I awoke late in the afternoon, a sharp hunger picking at me. As I slowly came to my feet, I saw, not far from where I'd been lying, signs of a terrible struggle in the underbrush that sloped so sharply to the beach. Some wounded thing, evidently a large animal, had thrashed about there in its death fight. And almost at my feet was a small glittering object, an empty cartridge from a .22. That was odd. The hunter had had his nerve to tackle a large brute with so small a gun. I examined the ground closely and found what I'd hoped for. The print of hunting boots. They pointed up toward a recess in the cliff, and I hurried quickly after them, for night was beginning to settle on the island. It was already dark when I came upon it. First, I thought it was a village. There were so many lights. But as I came closer, I saw that all the lights were in one building, a chateau on a high bluff. In a few moments, my bare feet were padding up stone steps, and I stood in front of the massive oaken door. Good evening. Oh, please don't be alarmed. There's no need for that gun. I'm no robber. It sounds silly, but I fell off a yacht. My name is Sanger Rainsford of New York City. He was certainly not alarmed by me, this giant who stood facing me. The revolver in his hand continued to point steadily at my chest, and the man behind it was solidly built and black-bearded to the waist, and silent. He waved me in with the gun and closed the door behind me. I was in a huge hall, but there was no time to look around. Another man was coming down the broad marble stairs, an erect, slender man in evening clothes. I stepped toward him. I've just been explaining to this chap that I've had an accident. My name is Sanger Rainsford.
It is a great pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Rainsford, the celebrated hunter, to my home.
Wow, thank you.
I've read your book on hunting snow leopards in Tibet. I'm General Zarov.
Believe me, General, I'm very happy to see you.
All right, Ivan, you can put down that gun. This gentleman is a guest. Ivan is an incredibly strong fellow, but he has the misfortune to be a mute. A simple thing, but a bit of a savage.
I'm even happy to see him.
Come, we should not be chatting here. You want clothes, food, rest. You shall have them. This is a most restful spot.
I can't tell you how grateful I am.
It is my pleasure. Follow Ivan, if you please, Mr. Rainsford. I was about to have my dinner, but it can wait. I think my clothes will fit you.
I followed the man into a huge beam-ceiling bedroom with a canopied bed large enough for 6 men. Ivan silently laid out an evening suit, and as I put it on, I noticed that it came from a London tailor. And Whitney'd called this place too isolated even for cannibals. I went downstairs and sat down opposite Zaroff in a dining room that suggested a baronial hall of feudal times. The food was excellent.
Perhaps you were surprised that I recognized your name, but I read all books on hunting, published in English, French, and Russian.